Before we dive into the episode, make sure you hit subscribe on the podcast platform you're listening on. Also, follow me on X at The Dave Dynasty and subscribe on YouTube by looking up Nostalgic Dave Dynasty. You can also buy one of my shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com/The Dave Dynasty. Now, enjoy the show.
Welcome to 1 hour of the toughest, roughest wrestling you'll ever see.
That's right, Dick the Bruiser said it all.
The big question, have you got the endurance? Have you got the brains to get past the excellence of execution?
The reason why Axe and myself were put on this earth is to demolish people.
Bobby Heenan is a very good-looking sport coat you've got on.
Yeah, and I paid for mine. Mine isn't government issue.
Hello, everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. And by golly, we're ready to go with another big week of championship wrestling.
Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to Wrestling Nostalgia. I'm your host, Dave Dynasty. Thank you for joining me for another episode. On this episode, my guest is drill instructor Bob Carter. We talk about Mid-Atlantic, the Savoldis, Stampede, Continental, and much, much more. Even if you're not familiar with the career of Bob Carter, you're going to enjoy this talk. So stay tuned. It is a ton of fun. Bob was a great guest, and I look forward to you hearing it. Hopefully everybody's been doing well out there as we dive into this fall season, and Halloween is right around the bend. Hopefully you guys are taking some time to spend with your families and enjoy this spooky season. Guys, I have to say thank you for all of your listens here lately. The numbers have been great. You guys have been very supportive, very interactive. Thank you so much. It is truly appreciated. I'm glad you're enjoying everything that I am putting out there. And again, got another great one for you today. So let's take a break and we'll come right back with my guest, Bob Carter. So stick around.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories, whether it's Jamie Ward with Georgia 81, Roman Gomez with the UWF in 1986, or Gene Jackson covering Memphis in 85. 3 projects going on right now over there at Regional Wrestling. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. Bob goes back in time each and every week, covering not just his career, but countless stories and interactions with hundreds of wrestling names spanning his 2 decades in the business. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to our social media guys for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. Plus, I'm constantly adding old school video clips and pictures from throughout wrestling history. You can follow us over on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
This is Listen to Their Screams, a horror podcast that feels like you're chatting with friends. Hello, I am one of your friends, Dave. I am one of the co-hosts of Listen to Their Screams with my friend Ike, and we want you to come and check us out. We are a fun-filled, positive horror movie podcast that does reviews, news, birthdays, anniversaries. We play games. We are a ton of fun every week for you, the horror fan out there. For all of our links to our social media and the podcast platforms, just check out our link tree. It is linktr.ee/listen2streams. That is listen, the number 2, and streams. Or look us up on your favorite social media platform and podcast provider. And welcome back to Wrestling Nostalgia. This time I'm being joined by D.I. Bob Carter. Bob, how are you?
I'm well, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You got a fun career. I'm looking forward to talking about it. But let's start. Where are you from?
Grew up in Boston, Massachusetts before I went in the Marine Corps.
All right. Did you grow up a fan of wrestling? Were you a WWF guy?
It's funny. I spent a year in college, and my semester, I had a semester at Framingham State, and there was a kid by the name of Riley that we did a wrestling talk show on the college radio station.
Oh yeah.
And we used to do all kinds of impressions and stuff like that. So yeah.
Sorry. So who were your favorites growing up there in the Northeast?
Well, it's funny you had the. So you got to realize that I'm 61 years old. So so back then it was the old WWF.
Yeah.
And wrestling in Boston live was on the Saturday after the welfare checks came out. And it was very ethnic in the sense that you had your Pedro Morales for the Puerto Ricans, and you had your Bruno Sammartino for the Italians, and so you had Cowboys and Indians, and so it was different, it was different, and I've always been somewhat, I've always been a heel, I think, before I was a heel, so. I always like the heels,
Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, you served in the Marines.
Right.
Tell us about that. When was that, and how many years you served, and everything?
I was in Grenada and Beirut. I was in the Marine Corps 4 years. I was in Grenada and Beirut in combat most of 1983, and then got out in 85. So it was a quick run through the grinder.
Yeah. Well, and so it says you were trained by Nelson Royal and Gene Anderson.
Yeah,
so
that's correct.
How did you come to meet these two and come to the world of professional wrestling? How did that happen?
I was working in the gym business, in the health club business, and I was selling memberships, and I was pretty good at it. And the company that I was working for put me out as a consultant to other gyms, and the gym that hired me was one that Gene Ligon was involved in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so I would ride with Gene to TVs now and then, and kind of watching the thing, and I'm like, shit, I could do this. And I was 6'4", 250, 260 when I got out, after getting out of the Marine Corps and all that. So Gene says, do you want to try out? And I said, yeah, I guess, So 250 Yahoos show up at Nelson Royal's farm in Mooresville, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to be on my birthday. I'm born July the 12th, and it's hotter than balls.
Yeah.
And the first thing you do is you run a 5-mile run around this outside of this cornfield. Then you do 500 free body squats. Then you had a 1.5-mile shuttle run. Then you had the similar shuttle run with a guy on your back, and then one with you're on his back. And then you did one push-up and sprinted 50 yards, did 2 push-ups, sprint, 3 push-ups, sprint, till you did 25 push-ups. And that's 250 in case you ain't adding up right. and then you got in the ring with somebody that could shoot, and they had me turned upside down like a pretzel. My elbow was in my ass socket, and there was, of the 250 that showed up that day, some of them wearing their fucking gimmicks and shit. Pardon my French.
No, that's all right. Say whatever you want.
And some of them in their gimmicks. A couple of them brought their valets. 250 guys showed up. 4 of us made it. And we went to, then we started in school. I went to school with like Ricky Nelson and Tommy Barrett, Tommy Angel, you know him as Tommy Angel.
Yep.
Rusty Riddle came later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Colt Steele.
Yep.
Mitch Snow.
Yep.
We had a lot of good guys, you know, kind of came through. Larry, Stevens, just trying to look in my head for names that I haven't spoken in 40 years.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. And then Gene Anderson was a unique human being, to say the least. I'll never, will never forget him, and some of the stuff that he did post-stroke and everything else is legendary. I watched him put the 2 Road Warriors on their knees screaming. He had one, test of strength, right? He had one with one hand and one with the other, and they were both on their knees screaming for mercy.
Yeah.
But and Nelson was so tough, and such a perfectionist, in the ring, just always knew where he was, always, when you had that kind of people working with you, you learned at a different level.
Yeah. Nelson Royal is a name that's getting lost to time, but he was an unbelievable talent, right? I mean, junior heavyweight champion.
Yeah, he was world junior heavyweight champion, and he could work both. He could work both sides of the dressing room. But listen, he was not the biggest, tallest, whatever.
Yeah.
But damn it, if he wasn't one of the toughest. When he hit you with a chop, I'm going to tell you something, your kidneys jiggled. It was an experience. And he and his family took me in, and they had a trailer on the property, near their main house. And, I mucked stalls and fed horses, and my roommate was the furrier that did the horseshoes and all that stuff, Yeah. He looked out for me and kind of gave me a home, which was needed at that time.
Yeah. 25 years later, Nelson Royal would have been a bigger star when size didn't matter as much.
Yeah.
He would have really stood out.
But he stood out then.
True.
The thing is that wrestling, without sounding like the old guy that, the business, when the business went from the territories to the national, all national all the time, the the work changed.
Right.
And you had guys that those that top to bottom on any card could work for days. And and they had to do it. If you go and watch fill in the blank name anywhere today, and you see them work on Friday in Los Angeles and Sunday in, say, Seattle, you're going to see the same match. And that didn't fly in the territories, because you had people that traveled, literally would drive from town to town weekend, because you wrestled on a schedule. You're in XYZ town every night, in a different town. And, you better know how to work, because those people would boo you right out of the building.
Yep. Absolutely.
So there was Nelson was just involved in a different business that, that unfortunately, unless you, are a real student and watch YouTube and scratchy VHS copies that have made it to YouTube, you won't appreciate it.
Right.
But,
yeah.
Which is a different business.
Yeah, it was different. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you jumped around a lot, but let's talk. I'm curious, because you did kind of I think it was pretty much a one-off for the Crockett's, where you did a Russian gimmick.
You're right.
And you teamed with, I believe, Ivan Koloff, Vladimir Petrov, and you were called the Big Red Machine. I think you were probably under a hood, under a mask.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So tell us about that. How did it come off, that just this one-off appearance?
That was match number one. That was match number one.
That was your first match?
Very first match. The very first match I got paid for.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So I'll tell you the precursor to that story. So I had, I've been trained and all that stuff, and was just kind of waiting to see, a lot of the guys were getting some matches on TV, enhancement matches or whatever you want to call them, jobbers, and we're getting asses kicked. And but I'd gone home to Boston for something, and they were having a show, and Tony Altamori, who was Lou Albano's partner back in the day,
the
he was
Sicilians.
running. Yeah, he was running a show near my house, and they needed a referee or whatever. So I went and I worked the show, and I reffed, and when it came to the back after the last match, and he was gone, and so wasn't the money. So I didn't get paid. So that never happened again. Anyway, so my first paid match, Gene Anderson called me and said, hey, I need you under a hood Tuesday in TV in Columbia, South Carolina. I said, okay. He said, call Ivan and work out, trans with him. So I met Ivan, and we all piled into his car. We had a big Lincoln or something, Cadillac. It was one of those. Anyway, we all piled in there, and he got me hooked up with a singlet, and I had some boots, and we went down to Columbia, and it was Dusty, Nikita, and Dickie Murdoch. It was the night that Dickie Murdoch turned on Dusty.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So, they started the match, and then Nikita comes in, and I'm supposed to be the Big Red Machine that was brought over to take him out, and boom, 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 and I take the sickle of the month, and did a 360 off the sickle. So, and that was kind of it. And then I had been working to get booked, and got a spot working for Mario Savoldis.
Right.
And I started with Mario and Angelo up in New England and northern Canada, up towards Canada and all that. So
Yeah, a completely different gimmick there, right? Because you went from playing a masked Russian to playing Irish Bobby O'Brien.
Yeah, Irish Bobby O'Brien didn't make a dime.
Yeah,
but
I gotta ask, Bob, do you have any Irish in your bloodline?
Yeah, actually, there's a little bit in my father was English and Irish. Yeah, my father was English and Irish. My mother was Italian. So but,
what did the Savoldis Mario just look at you and say, "Oh, we need an Irish gimmick here"?
No, it was I had I'd kind of been working the gimmick. But part of working at Nelson and with Nelson and Gene is you start to try to put together some kind of character,
Mm-hmm. You're right.
And so I went up there and I'll tell you what, there was so many like that was a unique spot because they would get kind of talent that was kind of had a big name at one point and they build a card with them, like they'd have one or two pieces of really top talent, and then there was a lot of younger guys, and some mid-carders that were doing pretty good, so like I went up there and I was jerking curtains and but we were working we were working a lot of weekends, like Thursday through Sunday kind of deals. We'd go over to Grossinger's in New York in the Jewish Alps. We'd go down to long parts of Long Island. We'd go all around Maine, Lewiston, Bangor. We'd go up into Montreal, over to over to Ontario, some just above the Niagara Falls, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
But like one show in particular sticks out. So I get the dressing room, and Nelson and Gene had trained us well that you go in, you say hello to everybody, you sit down, you shut your mouth. You don't need to be talking. And so I'm sitting there and getting my gear together, and like I told you, there's a lot of young talent up there, but they weren't as well trained, and they're talking what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, and they're talking to Blackjack Mulligan like they're on his level. And finally Mulligan listened about enough of this, and he looks at me, and I'm sitting, maybe, I don't know, 20 yards from him. He said, "What are you going to tell me?" I said, "I'm going to tell you that I'm going to put my boots on and sit over here and keep my damn mouth shut." He says, "Oh, hell no." He said, you bring your shit over here." And he had me sit next to him. So we're talking and find out, that I was in the Marines and he was a Marine. So anyway, it was, we had eaten some similar dirt. And the match, the main event was an bring what you want battle royal. So there are people walking around the dressing room with bats with barbed wire on them, trash cans, hockey sticks, metal things, hammers. I'm like, stuff that looked like it would hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And Mulligan looks at me and said, "What do you got?" I said, "Well, I got these chalkboard erasers that I wrapped in brick-colored tape." He said, "I'm with you, kid." So he and I got in there. We grabbed a corner and proceeded to pound the living crap out of each other with these chalkboard erasers. Because every time you'd hit something with it, the chalk would fly.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had that was just awesome. Anyway,
It's like some of the guys forgot how to work. Forgot the work part, right?
Oh no, yeah, and back then, there was always a lot of battle royals and things like that. And
yeah,
I mean, I watch some of this stuff that they do today in the middle of a battle royal, and I'm thinking, I'm surprised somebody hasn't broken their leg or something. I mean, that just, there's too much flipping and flopping. I honestly, somebody said, "Well, how would you do today?" I said, "I don't know if I would do that well today." Because I wrestled on the ground and told a story and grabbed a body part and whatever. But like I said, that I admire the athleticism. I admire the stuff they can do. I know I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be. I don't think I'd be very good. Unless I could talk to them. I mean,
I worked a little bit in the late 90s, early 2000s, mostly managing. Then I did a little bit in the ring. But one of the top rules, all the veterans told me, "Hey, you get their kid in a battle royal, don't bump, don't bump because you're going to get hurt." And it's like now it's like that doesn't apply.
Well, they don't. I don't know what. Apparently, there's no rules, so they changed the rules.
I guess.
But yeah. So anyway, so I went up there to Savoldis and, I worked with the Power Twins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Ivan Putski was in with his son Scott.
Yeah.
And when Scott had graduated from TCU, Scott was a hell of a fullback, running back from TCU.
Yeah.
And then we had Brandy and Kalua and Eric Spracia and they had so there was definitely, like I said, there was that spattering of guys that were kind of on the way up. There was a spattering of guys that I don't know what they were doing. They should have stayed home. And then there was the guys that, had made a name and were just, like Tony Atlas was there. He was always fun. I had one night I had Iron Sheik and the promoter. We had the Iron Sheik and Tony Atlas. And the promoter, Mario, says to me, "Bobby, I need you to get these two to Long Island." And we were in Lewiston, Maine.
Oh boy.
And I said, "Listen, boss," I said, "I got a 4-door, Renault Alliance." I said, "How the hell am I going to do that?" He said, "Stuff them in there and get them there." I said, "All right." So we get in the car. I got Sheik in the front seat and Tony taking up the entire back, and uncomfortable as he could possibly be. And Sheiky goes, Bobby, we must stop at the state police barracks in Portland, Maine." I said, "For what?" He said, "They confiscated my hash pipe. I got to get to my hash pipe. I smoke a dope with all the great wrestlers." I'm like, "Sheiky, we're not stopping for that, pal. That's a hard no." So he took him to my house in Boston, my mom's house. And at 2:00 in the morning, then my mother, God bless her, got up and cooked dinner for them. And we ate, and then we went to the gym the next morning, and we get to the gym, and Atlas says, "Bobby, I'm gonna bench today." I said, "Okay." He said, "I need a spot." I'm like, okay, well, call me when you need me, So he whistles at me. I went over there. I looked at the bar real quick. He's got 650 on the bar.
Jeez.
I said, "Tony," I said, no disrespect here, brother. I said, "but if you can't get this up, I'm dumping it to your right because I cannot get this off of you."
Yeah.
So, but he proceeds to push 650 for a triple on a pause. 1001, boom, up it went. 1001, boom, up it went. I mean, one of the strongest human beings I'd ever been anywhere with. And did a triple with 650 pounds on the bar like it was nothing.
Yeah, he's I can only imagine what a car ride with Iron Sheik and Tony Atlas.
Oh, yeah, that was 7 hours of God knows what.
Well, you also did some time in Calgary.
Yeah.
And this is often an underappreciated time in Stampede for me because there is still a lot of talent there, right? You had Owen Hart, Brian Pillman, lots of other guys. But you always hear about, working in that area, the drives were bad and some of the situation. What did you enjoy your time working for Stampede in Calgary?
Yes and no. My car blew up on the way there. I actually had to take a bus from Buffalo to Calgary, 55 hours across Canada.
Yeah.
I get to the bus station. I call Stu, and I said, "Stu, this is O'Brien. I'm here." He goes, "Who are you?" He sends his son, Smith, down to pick me up and take me to the St. Regis Hotel.
Okay.
This $65 a week flop house, 11 stories, looking over an alley where Native American Indians get drunk and stab each other on a nightly basis. The bedroom, the room had a tub in the middle of it, and you had to go across the hall to shit and shower with all the rest of the vagrants. But and then they like to take liberties. They have to try you. I got my head bounced off the floor in Edmonton onto the concrete on a DDT where the guy didn't protect me. So I'm there, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and Stu comes in and he says, "O'Brien, we're gonna change your gimmick. We're gonna call you Father O'Brien. You're gonna come to the ring in a cassock, carrying the Bible, and when the other fella gets the best of you, you're gonna get out the brass knucks and give him a whack." To which I said, "Fuck you. I'm fucking Catholic. I'm gonna get hit by fucking lightning."
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, if I had any damn sense, I'd have done the gimmick. You know what I mean? I think it would have been pretty funny.
Yeah.
But anyway, I at that point recognized that it wasn't going to go well, and I got Fuller. I got a hold of Robert Fuller.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And they brought me from Calgary as Irish Bobby O'Brien to Birmingham. Then was Southeastern then, before they sold before they sold it, and it became Continental and CWF.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I went from Calgary down to the Fullers.
Yeah, which is probably the time you're most known for, right? That's where you
Yeah.
started doing the DI Bob Carter. So how did that come out? Was that an ideal from the Fullers? An ideal you
No,
had?
that was mine. Yeah. That
Yeah.
was
I
all
mean,
mine.
yeah, I mean, it's obviously right. You're a former Marine, right? It's played a little bit off of reality.
Yeah, there was enough reality in it. And and it, I mean, I mean, without it sounding, I was authentic,
Right.
as
Yeah.
far as, and, I mean, and it gave me a little bit of freedom, especially with the mic. And, when I got there, I'd go out, jerk the curtain, and then they bring me back in the main event, or the semi-main event with them. Like I like Fuller and Golden. I was like the third wheel, and I'd bump and take the falls and stuff. And I got some great experience getting to work with, the Armstrongs and with, the Southern boys and all that. And then, Eddie, so then they, I don't, it's funny that there's, when you're in it, you know what's going on. When you've been out of it as long as I have, you forget stuff. But at some point, they sold the territory and they sold it, and Eddie Gilbert came in with Paulie.
Yep.
And they put me with Randy Colley in Detroit Demolition. And then we brought up Mark Young, who was Chief J. Strongbow's son.
Yep. Right.
And he had spent time in the Army, a couple of years in the Army, and we brought him up as my private. And
you had a group, right, called the Honor Guard.
Yeah, the Honor Guard. It was just the three of us, yeah. But it was, but then we got to work with, we did a three-way. Well, Randy and I had worked with we'd worked with the Southern boys. We worked with the Nightmares, Danny Davis and Wayne, what was his name? Ken Wayne. And
right.
I think he's in jail now. And we worked with, and then we did a three-way thing with Sid, Lord Humongous, the Sid Udi version, and the kid from Pittsburgh,
Shane Douglas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was Sid and Shane and then Sika and Kokina, who became
Yokozuna.
Yokozuna. So, and we ran a program with them and with the three of us. And I mean, there was so much creative. We popped that territory, not, the group, but, Eddie, under Eddie's leadership. I mean, we blew the doors off of that territory for a solid year.
Yeah.
And so much great stuff.
Yeah. And Randy Colley, as another name that people probably don't talk about enough, right? What a veteran. I mean, an original Moondog, original member of Demolition.
He was the founder of Demolition, actually.
The first Smash.
It was his.
Came up with the ideal.
Yeah, it was all him. But he walked to the ring the first time he went out as Demolition for Vince. And some of the fans started chanting Moondog, and they killed him out, and they killed him out of it.
Yeah,
and
right.
He never really recovered from the fallout of that. And he just he passed away 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, not too long ago.
I got to see him right before he died.
Yeah. What was it like working with him? Because you're still overall relatively young in the business, right? Jumping around a
No,
lot.
I was
And
relatively green. I mean, he'd call half the match for me from the ring apron. Because I mean, I'm with the heels calling the match, and he was calling his stuff and my stuff.
yeah, yeah.
And I mean, Harvey,
That's okay.
it's such a tag. He did so much in tag team wrestling, all those years, and it was a master class. I mean,
Yeah.
I and then his strength wasn't the stick,
Yeah.
and I mean, if I didn't do anything worth a crap, I could talk.
Yeah.
and 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 had so it was a great partnership.
Yeah. And of course he knew that Southern style, especially, right? He knew.
Well, yeah. Well, he knew Memphis,
Sure.
um and Eddie's style was in your face.
Yeah. Yeah. What was it like working for Eddie as a booker, right? I mean,
Oh,
did you?
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I had look, if you really go back and look at the time I was there, the TV time that I got was significant. But building the character, building the whole honor guard thing, the weeks of pursuing Mark Young, and then becoming Private Pile, shaving his head,
Yeah.
I mean, just like all the creative that Eddie gave me a framework and said go,
Yeah.
and so it was really cool to be in a spot. I mean, I wasn't by any means, I wasn't the top guy, but I had a role, and I did what I was asked to do, and it, one day we're doing promos in we used to do TV on Mondays in Birmingham, and you'd shoot 2 or 3 weeks of stuff at a time,
Yep. Right.
And so we're in the fairgrounds arena in Birmingham, and we're doing promos, and the they'd have the heels, would go first, and then the baby faces would follow it. And Randy and I were doing something with Austin Idol, and I was hot that day, and I was blistering it, and Idol, after 2 rounds, he finally said, he said, I'm going first. I can't follow the kid. So it was that was kind of, that was always a fond memory,
Yeah.
I wish I had the 35-year, 40-year career he had, but
Yeah.
but
yeah, right.
I didn't choose to do that.
Yeah. Well, in a rather short period of time, right? You went from the Northeast U.S. and with the Savoldis to Western Canada for the Hearts, to the Southeast U.S. for Continental. That's all over the place. That's quite a range.
And then I went to work for Nelson and back in North Carolina for a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
and
every territory
then,
had its own flavor, right?
Oh yeah, and then I went to Memphis. I finished in Memphis.
Yeah. So what's it like? Is it difficult as a wrestler jumping from territory? Is there a period where you have to kind of get a feel for the fans, what they like, what they're going to react to? Because you can't do the same things in every territory.
I mean,
didn't, to a certain extent.
Yeah, I guess. Well, in northern New England, I was arguably a baby face. I mean, the I was world light heavyweight champion at,
For the Savoldis, right?
for
Yep.
for for a minute. I was they needed the belt to put on somebody else, and the heel that had it, Eric Spracia, was difficult to do business with. And so Angelo Savoldi said, the kid may not do business. I said, okay. I said, I know what to do. So, because Gene Anderson had prepared me, for those. He said, Bobby, he said, there's going to be times. This is what's going to happen.
Yep.
Somebody doesn't want to do business or whatever, and you've got to take care of it. And he had taught me a couple of hooker holds and a couple things, and I was always pretty good with my hands anyway. And so we get in the ring and we're going through the thing, and we get ready to go to the finish, and the finish was just supposed to be a little baby face sunset flip thing, and he blocked the flip, and I said, all right. I get up, and I looked at him and I said, you better protect yourself. And I dotted him right between the eyes, dropped him, and covered him. They give me the belt, and I jump up and down. Anyway, that was that. And I could take the belt back to the dressing room. I handed it to Angelo. I said, this what you wanted? He went, yeah. But anyway, so I went from being a baby face. I go up to Canada. I'm arguably a baby face ish. I don't. I didn't get. I don't think I had a chance to get over up there. Honestly, I don't think that was in the cards. But no sour grapes. I was glad to have had the experience. And then then to go back down to the South as the DI. Alabama, Memphis, and for Nelson and the Carolinas, it was arguably the same. I did me, and they hated me, and that worked,
Yeah.
And if you gave me a live mic, I'll get them to hate me quicker. So, I was fortunate that my style kind of translated, and I had learned, by the time I'd gotten, I'd learned from Randy, I'd learned from Eddie, I'd learned, I went to school. Every night, we ride the road, was when I first got to Alabama, for example, I was riding, it was me, Sid Udi, and downtown Bruno,
Yep.
and just, and then I traveled some with, dirty white boy, Tony
Anthony.
Tony Anthony, who
Yep.
was brilliant. Tom Pritchard is brilliant.
Yeah.
I worked every night for a month with Danny Davis,
Oh, yeah.
So, you got to listen, the people will tell you, in the territory, live shows, TV was TV, whatever, but live shows, a well-trained heel is going to listen for that volume level, to know when to cut them off, when to blow the roof off the joint, and I, I got to believe that, like I said, I wasn't Steamboat. I wasn't Flair by any means. But I believe that the people I worked with would tell you that they had good matches, and and that I did my best for them.
Yeah, yeah. How hard was it trying to have a career? I mean, during a period you were it's kind of in a weird period, right? When the territories were starting to dry up a little bit, the number of places to work were decreasing. How hard was it to find consistent work, have a career during that time?
Well, it was a lot of baloney blowouts, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
We used to go get a pound of bologna, you get a loaf of bread, and you'd steal the mustard from the McDonald's.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was thin times, but you were grinding, trying to get to, at that time, really New York or WCW, whatever that was at the time. I forget which version it was.
Yeah.
But I mean, for instance, my roommate in Memphis, I was in Memphis for about a month before I decided I just couldn't do it anymore. And I was Undertaker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was 5 of us in a 1-bedroom apartment,
Yeah. Yeah.
But but he was, he was a year then away from being who he became,
Yeah.
So I mean, so we were all grinding, we were all trying to make it to whatever next was, and you just you just tried to live as inexpensively as you could, and it wasn't easy by any means, you know what I mean? It was stressful as hell, but but it was certainly the memories, the it's funny, people think, well, do you have good relationships with these guys? And the answer is no, because you're always trying to get above wherever you were, on the card. You were trying to get to whatever next was, and that was hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you were certainly, you did business with people, you were professional with people. I mean, there were some people you wanted to kill. There were people that were, abusing themselves and, all that. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy nonsense, but it wasn't, by no means, it wasn't easy, but it was what it was.
Yeah. So when did you finally know or decide that, hey, this is it, I'm hanging it up, I'm done? How did that come about?
Well, it's kind of, I was, Nikita, Gene Ligon, and I owned 3 gyms in the Carolinas.
Okay.
And at one of the periods of time when I was working there for Nelson, I was home. I went to promote the gym at the baseball park in Gastonia, North Carolina, the Gastonia Rangers, which was a then single A Texas Ranger farm team with a 17-year-old Puerto Rican catcher by the name of Pudge Rodriguez.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I went over there and I met Roman Gabriel, who was, former quarterback in the NFL and blah, blah, blah. Well, Gabriel proceeds to tell me what I was doing on TV. Like, he was like, hey, you did this last week and all that. And was just, when I was working with Nelson for the, what did we call that? ACW.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, and Roman invited me to a golf tournament. And so I went to this golf tournament, And I didn't know anything about golf. I'd never played golf at the time. And anyway, I'm in Memphis, and he calls me in Memphis, and he says, "Hey, can you play in a tournament such and such a date in Rocky Mount, North Carolina?"
Hey, that's where I live.
Huh?
That's where I live now.
I know a lot about Rocky Mount, buddy.
Whew, ain't much to know.
Well, I'm in Elizabeth City now. So anyway.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So I said, "Well, Gabe," I said, "Yeah." I said, "All right." I said, "How am I going to get there though?" I said, "I'm in fucking Memphis." He said, "I'll fly you." I said, "Okay." I said, "Where are you going to fly me back to?" He said, "Memphis." I said, "Nah, Boston." I said, "I'm retiring." And that's what I did. I got a flight. He flew me I went in on my very last match was in Henderson, Kentucky, in a racetrack, in a horse race track inside like the observation area, whatever. I mean, it was a arena kind of thing. And my last match was with Dustin Runnels.
Mm-hmm.
And what's kind of interesting is that when I first started to work with Gene and Nelson, they would have me go down to the high school, I forget which Mecklenburg high school they went to, East, I think, and wrestle with Dustin and Brad Anderson and Dustin, who were both high school kids, because they needed somebody bigger to work with. And so I didn't know anything about amateur wrestling, so it was really good for me to learn,
Yeah.
So anyway, so it was ironic to be able to kind of finish up, with Dustin. So,
yeah.
But I wrestled that night, and I went in the dressing room, and I think the next time we were supposed to be off for a couple of days, and next time we were supposed to work was TV on that Saturday coming up in Memphis, and Lawler says, "See you Saturday." I said, "No, boss." I said, "I'm all done."
Yeah.
I said, I won't be back. And because my car had blown up. I mean, there was just too much going on, and the woman my first wife that I had been technically engaged to for almost 10 years. She'd about had enough. And so that was that.
Yeah. So what are you up to currently? What was quote unquote retirement life like for Bob? And
more like, you mean what was life like?
Yeah, regular life.
Yeah, I got into the sales business, and the last number of years I've been working in the golf business. I've run either as an assistant or I've helped operate golf courses.
Yeah. Do you have at all any involvement in professional wrestling or any interest? Do you watch it much, or have you pretty much washed your hands?
Yeah, I'll watch this and that now and then. I will. I'm always fascinated by, what people are doing and how it's going. But now with all these like fan fests and all that, I mean, no one's ever asked me, so I haven't gone anywhere. I had a pretty good run playing in celebrity golf tournaments for a number of years with Gabriel because of Roman, and I played in a lot of golf tournaments, and but I'm not, I have a couple of masks that Jack Lord, the bomber, make for me that I use when I help out with some junior golf clinics. and the Crusher will come and tell the kids about golf etiquette under the mask. But other than that, every now and then I'll talk to a couple of guys or whatever, but once when Randy died, that was really my oldest friend that I'd stayed in touch with. And so other than sitting around the golf course, I'll regale the boys with a few stories here and there that I can if something comes to mind.
Yeah. But you're open, right? You're open to doing a fan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've done a few of these things like with you, and if somebody asks, I'll talk. I mean, it's I like to say I wasn't out there for a long time, but if you look back at the body of work that I did put up, it wasn't bad.
Yeah. You crammed a lot in your years. And hit a lot, and like I said, it's a very interesting time in wrestling, right? Because it was that kind of that transitional time from the territory days not being completely gone, but yet fading. It was right. There's this weird transitional time between kind of these two eras of wrestling almost. And
it was a vortex. It was a vortex.
Unique. Yeah. So Bob, I appreciate you coming on and talking.
No problem, mate.
And man, I think I could probably sit here and talk to you and pick your brain on. I could probably rattle off guys, and you can tell stories for hours on specific guys, and maybe we'll do that in the future.
Let me know.
I just wanted to kind of hit the high spots, give an overview of your career, and it's fascinating. And we'll stay in touch, and maybe we'll revisit and do a part 2 down the road.
All right, buddy. Thanks so much.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia podcast network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia podcast network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen if you know what's good for you.
Hey everybody, Gene Jackson here, inviting you to check out the Retro Wrestling Review, where each week I'm joined by some great co-hosts who help me review classic episodes of USWA Championship Wrestling, and right now we are doing week-by-week reviews of 1993. But we don't just do reviews, sometimes we get a chance to interview some of the people who were there and lived it, plus do watch-alongs. It's a lot of fun, so check out new episodes that drop every Wednesday at WrestleCopia.com. And to find links to everything associated to the podcast, you can go to uswapodcast.com.
All right, and welcome back. Thank you to Bob Carter for coming on and being my guest and giving us that great interview. So much fun to talk to Bob. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Guys, go follow me on X. I'm there at The Dave Dynasty. That is the central best way to follow me on social media. Also, go check out all of the WrestleCopia network of podcasts. You can go to WrestleCopia.com or search for those shows on your favorite podcast platform. Also, be sure to check out my friends at the Ultimate Classic Wrestling Library at ClassicWrestling.net, or you can download the Ultimate Classic Wrestling app on all of your devices. Guys, I also have a new partner, a new friend, a new sponsor, if you want to say, coming onto the show here soon. If you are a professional wrestling fan, particularly a nostalgic professional wrestling fan such as I am, you're going to enjoy this. More information coming up in the near future on that. The ads will start rolling here in the show, and there's going to be lots of interaction and partnership and things we're going to do with them. Some interviews, some things happening. It's going to be very cool, very fun. So watch for that coming up. On next week's episode, my guest will be Travis Orndorff, the son of the legendary Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. That episode will be released right around Paul's birthday, what would have been Paul's birthday. And I had Travis on to talk about his father. I'm a huge fan of Paul Orndorff, and it was a pleasure to talk to Travis about his dad, not only about his career, but about the man behind the career, what the man was like at home, what the man was like as a father, It was a very, very wonderful chat with Travis, and I look forward to you hearing that on the next episode. So thank you again, guys, for all that you do. Make sure you subscribe to me on social media, particularly on X. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, because not only do you get all the episodes of the podcast, but there's also lots of other wrestling content and stuff on there for you. So go check that out. All the links are in the show notes, and thank you for all your support. So until next week, when my guest will be Travis Orndorff, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and always keep on growing.
Fans, we brought you All-Star Championship Wrestling. This is Sam Maneker thanking you for being with us and saying until next time, so long, everyone.